And a happy new year to each and every one of you out there in my racehorse land. Nick Hines, the Sarge, reporting for duty. And I hope you had a wonderful new year with family and friends. Hopefully you're staying safe and staying healthy, and look forward to that for the entire year. We've got a great show, a first run of show for My Racehorse Live, My Racehorse TV today. And of course, if you had an opportunity to check in to the live programming last weekend, at Tizamagician taking another step forward, of course, to what looks to be a fun campaign for 2021 with a sharp victory, and not twice other than the tip of the cap, of course, to Papa Mandela and his team, and to all of the shareholders and partners who have been oh so patient. Yes, patience, paying it forward. And of course, we will be bringing in our Friends First CEO and founder of My Racehorse, Michael Behrens, to catch up on all things My Racehorse, preview some races, and of course, some exciting opportunities coming up for you all. Of course, it's going to be a fun year. Look forward to it. We got off on the right note. We closed out, of course, with that daughter Medaglia d'Oro, who certainly looks to have the road ahead of her to be quite elusive. All right, I want to welcome in both Joe Moran, our California. Well, ladies first. Let's go to Hannah, our social media, all things correspondent. Hannah, Joe, California. Good morning, sunshine.
How are you?
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful day. And a happy new year from Bradley out there in My Racehorse land. Yeah, no doubt, team. It's great to see you, and it looks as if you recovered from your New Year's celebrations. And by the way, Joe Mishak traveling on his way to Kentucky. And of course, we'll be getting us some updates in coming weeks with the horses down in Ocala. But let's talk Tizamagician. That was a win. I just was fortunate enough to be on track there with Joe Moran. Hannah, I know you put your hard-earned $2, but Joe, it was expected, but I think he took it to another level here to start the year new.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hear we're going to see the stretch run. And he's a horse that's always been a fighter when he gets the right trick, per se. So he's kind of a horse that's been training really well. We talked about it on our last show. We were really excited to see his comeback effort. We thought he was training great. Trainer Richard Mandela said the horse couldn't be doing any better coming into this race. I think when you look at the final weight, he came in weighing the most he has. He's really matured, really just filled out into a 4-year-old. And like me and you talked about Tiz now, they just continue to get better with age. And I think you're seeing that with this horse. And he got on the front end, which I was a little concerned about. That was my biggest concern in the race was he going to be able to get that lead like he was able to? And tip my cap to Drayden Van Dyke, just a masterful ride. And it was an impressive comeback performance for him. So hopefully we'll have some stakes opportunities here coming up in 2021.
Well, what's really great is the fact that here's a horse that's won 2 of his last 3. He's 3 of 13, 8 of 13 in the exactly. You mentioned the weight, weighing in at 1,175 pounds. When this horse in his 3rd career start, when he weighed in 1,117 pounds. So earnings now in excess, nearly $180,000. Here at a 93 buyer speed rating, which co-topped on the sheets as well. And Drayden fits in like a glove. And major props to Drayden for the ride that he put forth. As we look at Tizamagician, A, how did he come out of the race? B, what would be the next step for him?
Yeah, well, he came out of the race perfect order. I talked to Gary Mandela the day after, ate up all his food. Energy was good. So from that end, everything's good. There's no race really locked down yet, but we're going to review all of our options. The most ideal target would be the San Pasquale. I believe it's January 28th at the end of the month, going a mile and 1/8. And that's kind of the key for this horse. As the competition is going to get harder naturally for him, we want to keep him going 9 furlongs plus, which we think will be his best running. Maybe not quite going a mile and 1/2. He tried it. We know he can get it. But I don't think that's necessarily his best distance. So if we can find something between a mile and 1/8, mile and 1/4 for him, that's going to be the ideal target.
Well, and with the recent news, the retirement of Mucho Gusto, that opens up the handicap division, not only here on the left coast, but across the land. And I think that it should be a fun journey with Tizamagician, as we had hoped that he would start the year right. And Hannah, I wanted to go back to you. I know that you're all about making that $2 wager. Horse paid, what, $10 and some change? How did you do?
I did make some money. I forget what I ended up betting, but yes, I'm not a huge gambler. But watch out, maybe these next few times I'm going to have my own handicapping graphics. So just watch out. But yes, I did make a few dollars, and it was really fun. I wish I could have been there in person, but it was really exciting to root from home. And I do think we have a few questions. So Joe Moran, this one's for you. Any update on Popular Demand?
Yeah, Popular Demand. I saw Richard Mandela yesterday at Santa Anita doing well. He is just about week 3 of being or going on week 4, but week 3 of actually training. We had some rain last week, so he really missed about 4 or 5 days consistently of being ridden. So the goal before he comes into Santa Anita is to get 30, 35 days of jogging with a rider on his back, and then he'll head into Santa Anita. So hopefully before the month of January ends, we'll see him in Santa Anita.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you for that update on Popular Demand. And Hannah, we want to welcome in our first guest of 2021. And I was kind of in the process of scripting a show, finding Michael Behrens. Of course, Michael's been out and about and has transitioned to the 859. We thought we'd go straight to our friend, CEO and founder of My Racehorse, Michael Behrens, to discuss all things exciting opportunities and we can look forward to in 2021. So, Michael, welcome to the show. And can you give us some insight on the leasing process? This is one big question, obviously, that's come up. It's something very new. And I know as a horse owner, horse manager, just about anything you can mention in this game, back in the day, back in the 80s, leasing was a big thing. And you would see the likes of Elmendorf to numerous others that would actually lease horses. So welcome, brother. It's nice to see you.
Well, first, thanks for having me back on. I think the last time I was on, we were talking the kickoff of Authentic, and that worked out okay. So hopefully we'll keep the streak alive and go 2 for 2. But yeah, the lease is super interesting. We've been looking at it for a good year now. Like you said, it's been around racing for a long time. And with our kind of ambitions to democratize everything thoroughbred ownership, this is definitely a part of thoroughbred ownership that's been part of the game for a long time. And just simply what it is that instead of purchasing a horse that has the value in both the racing equity and the breeding equity, you are purchasing just the racing equity. And there's a lot of attractive kind of elements about that. And one being the fact that, you know, for a lot of people, the racing side of a horse, they understand the speed figures, they understand the class, the conditions that they're in, and they can get their head around exactly how they individually would associate value to that horse. It's very difficult when you get to the breeding world. There's macro influences and there's bidding processes and all that stuff. To separate those is really interesting and allows you potentially to be involved in horses that you would never be able to be involved in, because in kind of our assessments, lease prices can be as low as 5 to 15% of the total value. It gives you a chance to compete in lots of barns and in big races, and it winds up being like a pretty. It removes a lot of the deviations in terms of like the highs and lows of the financial side of horse race ownership. So again, with our goal to democratize ownership, knowing that fact that a lot of people have been playing this, we have been on the kind of lookout for a few opportunities, and the ones that we've launched here, we are super excited by.
Well, again, I think accessibility is another word that comes to mind with the opportunities with a lease in particular. And I also feel that, we're going to discuss the action bundle within this show, but I think it gives you opportunity and outreach as far as the, I guess, diverseness of this program, as far as being able to race not only in California, having horses, say, for example, in Louisiana, and kind of broadscape, so to speak, and a numbers game. The question is being asked is why My Racehorse had added lease option to its owners.
Yeah, I mean, one of the main things, again, is to go back to the idea was to give people the opportunity to compete in all things horse ownership, right? And like you talked about, from the 80s, it's been going on. I mean, we know the biggest spotlight was brought on leases with Justify, right? That is a horse that would have been very, very difficult for people to be able to buy into, but they were able to buy in via the lease opportunity. So for us, there was a couple of things. The timing was right, also because we just basically went through and purchased 17 or 20 yearlings it was at the sales, and had a lot of people get participatory in these exciting young babies that for many of them, it's going to take a while to get to the racetrack. We know that, if half of the yearlings race as a 2-year-old, will be in good shape. So that's kind of an omission of action, right? And so to be able to come in with a lease right now and be able to get them very efficient, again, for pennies on the dollar, give people action right out on the heels of the yearling sales, it felt like the time was right. Plus these deals were right. Like we see a lot of deals. I mean, I know we talk about it a lot, but we maybe haven't shared it with as many people, but there's probably dozens and dozens of deals that are basically rejected for every one that we accept. And, the 2 partners that we brought on board, Spendthrift Farms and SF Bloodstock, for these leases are the best in the game, right? These are this kind of the top tier kind of partnerships and outfits, and the deals that they gave the My Racehorse, ownership groups were right on target. So I think for us, we knew we were going to bring them to the game, but we weren't going to do it unless we brought them in a manner that was to the quality we expect. And these 2 operations brought us some great deals.
And I think I want to jump in there also, Mike, is that, many people ask, what's the process when it comes to vetting out a particular horse when it pertains to a lease? Well, having been directly involved with My Racehorse, it's not any different than it would be if we were to go out and buy a yearling or a privately acquisition horse. It's the same vetting process, x-rays to be done, scoping, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a diligence to process that's involved there in having that done.
That's a great point. I'm glad you brought it up, because we went through a very rigorous vetting process on the horses that have made it through the lease process. So just like when we go through a purchase, we go through the pre-purchase, the vet exam. We have our resident vet go through it with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that we feel comfortable with the horse and where they're at in the time that we purchase. And we did the same thing here. And it's an extremely rigorous process. And a lot of the horses, couldn't make it that we had our eye on, that we thought would be really attractive, that were, stakes quality, but we have to balance that with kind of where they're at, physically. So the vet process was extremely important part of this process and bring these few horses to fruition.
Yeah. And obviously from a longevity standpoint, and we'll get to the lease end as far as what takes place here in a moment, but can you explain the mechanics behind a lease option as far as, how it's built and what takes place there?
No, perfect. So the lease is comprised of 2 parts. One is what the purchase price is to buy the racing rights, right? So all the horses that are on the site now and will be over the next couple of days, we bought the 2021 racing rights. So there was a fee to buy that, and it was pretty minimal. Like I mentioned, it's anywhere between 5 and 11% of usually the horse's value. So you're getting basically a 95% discount in many situations to be able to buy the horse. And so you'll see that you can go through the offering pages. You'll see specifically what was paid as the lease price. That's the upfront fee to get access to that racing equity and to get the prize pool. Then you're responsible for the pro rata, training cost. And so that's what makes up the offering, which is that lease price, that discount, the training cost, and then the race earnings are then the owners. So after a race, basically you take the net proceeds from the race minus, jockey and trainer, and any fees are associated with it. That then is distributed back in. So it's all prepaid. It's a really very clean, simple product, which I like. I think we get a lot of feedback about people who like the simplicity of how we've made the overall microshare product. And this couldn't be much more simple, right? One-time lease fee, prepaid training for the whole year. Every race, basically net race earnings are distributed back to all the different owners. And if for any reason the leases, the horses retired halfway through, and we basically return the training cost as well. So, I think it's a pretty simple deal. I think it's why it gets so popular amongst a lot of big players there, because of this simplicity, because people know really what they're getting into when they buy from this perspective, and that discount we talked about.
Well, I think the other aspect of the lease option is a learning curve, and I think that for the new investor, there's a commitment involved. Regardless of whether or not you're buying or leasing, there's a commitment, because it's money out of pocket expense. But I think realistically, when you come into the game at first, you say to yourself, how am I going to learn without having to invest too much? Now, granted, we invested in a horse called Collusion Illusion for essentially a plug nickel to be along a ride of a horse that's already a grade 1 horse. But I think in the lease option, especially from what you formulated here with the action bundle, and having access to horses that are going to run in graded stakes, essentially, because based on what I've seen, they're not horses that are maidens. I mean, these are horses that are proven commodities. And I think at the end of the day, I think you have a leg up on the competition than if you were to go in, say, for example, through a syndicate and invest in a 2-year-old in training or a yearling that you don't know much about. At least here you have track record. You can assess for yourself if you're a handicapper, which chances are if you're wanting to invest in a racehorse, you've probably bet on a horse at some point in your life. So I love the transparency and the fact that you have the opportunity to come in at a small investment level. Gwyneth Oswin-Bertaki, she says, does ownership end when the lease ends then? So essentially, I know you kind of answered it within the mechanic aspect of it, but does it end when the lease ends? Is it over?
Yes, it's actually a great question, because I mean, as kind of we pursued this, there's you want that clarity, and it's all term based. So we bought to a certain term. So you buy 2021, it's over. On some of these horses, we have the right to re-up for another year if they decide to run. Many of these horses will just go to the breeding shed afterwards, but it's very specific. You're buying a term. Like I mean, horses, I love horses. I hate commoditizing and kind of, doing a parallel to like automotive, but you go in and you lease a car for 3 years. After 3, either just, you take it, you no longer have it. And then in the horse situation, we have the 2021 racing rights. After that, the term is ended. So it's financial obligations for us are over, and then also so is the revenue streams.
All right, and then this brings the next question from Kristen Parker. Will My Racehorse continue to have traditional offerings, i.e. ownership, or are leases essentially a way of the future for My Racehorse?
Oh no, we'll have. I mean, our goal is to have everything. I mean, there's so many cool ways to be involved in racehorse ownership, right? From leases to owning horses. I mean, we had never even gotten the stallion game until Authentic. That was the first time we ever decided that we were actually going to stand a stallion. There's brood mares that we could potentially purchase. There's weanlings. There's pin hooking. There's leases. There's ownership. I mean, our goal is that there's just a lot of exciting ways to be participatory. This is one of them. We think it's the right time of year to launch it, like I talked about with the yearlings. But our core product right now is really going to be the full ownership, and then we'll just allow the demand to dictate it. I mean, really, at the end of the day, I think something like 30,000 people are using the platform right now, and we listen every day to what they enjoy the most. The one thing that we hear time and time again is people want big stables. They want action. They want to be in big barns. They want to be diversified, and it is absolutely the right thing to do. Not only is it just more fun to be diversified because you get to learn from a lot more trainers, you get to know more jockeys, more circuits. But it's also just the better fiscal thing to do, right? It's really hard to predict which horse is going to take off and do well. To give yourself a nice portfolio, so whatever means you have, it's $100, it's $1,000, it's $10,000. Getting yourself a stable, getting diversified is the best way to play it, both from just an enjoyment, entertainment, and just from a fiscal responsibility. And I think this lease just gives you another opportunity to stay diversified.
Well, I think this just comes down to, and I'll get to Daniel Drummond's question here in a moment, but I will say this. This is essentially your fantasy stable becoming a reality stable, in that you can create that portfolio. And that's one thing that I can greatly appreciate about what you've created here, Michael. And obviously we've become friends on ground level. And when this concept came into play, what's interesting is when we first sat down with Joe Mishak here in the Claremont office, the lease option wasn't something that really came to mind. But the more I think about it and looking back at how it used to be, I like the fact that we're bringing that to opportunity for the shareholders to come in with that lease option. So it's kind of a no strings attached. Hey, we're along for the ride. Let's test this out. And there's no long-term commitment, which is great. And, in most cases, I think that it's a numbers game. And in this particular game of the sport of horse racing, got to have numbers to be able to compete.
Well, just one more comment on that, Nick, if I could. Yeah. One of the things that I think is really interesting as I've gotten to know more and more of the owners on the My Racehorse platform, we have some people that love risk, right? They are like, I want to come in, I want to buy that yearling that's unproven, that was really expensive, and the horse may never make it to the races. That's just the nature of our business, and that's a scary proposition to go pay $500,000 or $1 million for a yearling that might never make it to the races. Our model obviously mitigates that risk a little bit. We have others that are absolutely risk averse. They love to be like just staying with a place in which they can try to be as risk averse as possible. And the leases definitely errs with that side of it, right? People who don't want to take the big swings, they don't have the big upside, they don't have the big downside. The leases really do that. So I think just overall, when you think about, you know, the tens of thousands of people that we have, you have all these different people that just think about how they want to enjoy and build their stable differently. And those that maybe are a little bit more risk averse, I think as they look into the details, they're really going to like it. Like I enjoyed it as well because I know what I'm getting into. The values are so much more discounted. I know what races, I know the class, I can see it. So it just goes into that. I do think it's important to have that diversity when you have a group of that's so large as ours.
Well, I also think it's great. I mean, if I had the opportunity, for example, to lease a high-end vehicle, whether it be a Lamborghini or a Ferrari at a certain sense, and they said, hey, you can only drive this car for the next 2 or 3 months, I'm good with it. I'll try it out. And at some point, if I can afford to buy one of those cars, I certainly will. So it just gives you, to me, it just gives you that diversity and the opportunity to kind of pick and choose. And once again, these are horses that are already proven. Now, granted, you know, going forward, there may be options to buy into these high-end yearlings or lease into these high-end yearlings at a nominal short fee, you know. So I wanted to get into Daniel Drummond's question here. He says, how does the banking process work for those that run before the sale happened? Will the money go directly to your account once purchased, or how does that work?
Yeah, no, great question. So My Racehorse has a My Racehorse wallet. And we have our tech actually integrates directly with Equibase. So the way it works is as soon as the race is over, our platform automatically recognizes the amount of money that was earned by the horse, looks quickly to see how many shares that you have in that horse, and authenticates your credentials and adds the money directly to your wallet. So you log into My Racehorse, you click on the account, you see your wallet, and you'll see the money there within 15 minutes usually of the race going off. And at that point, you can keep it, you can kind of use it to invest into additional horses, or you can cash out like you would on an ADW, request a check or request a ACH directly to your account. So it's relatively simple, it's relatively quick, and I think it's been a feature that a lot of people really appreciated, because in this sport, for those who have been racing for a while, we know how long it can be to get paid out. The 15 minutes after a race is pretty nice, and with the leases all being prepaid, it's every single time, so which is pretty cool.
All right, well, Michael, I think we covered a lot in a short amount of time, and you know, I want to thank you for your time coming in on this January 8, 2021. What a great way to start the year, having you, and first and foremost as our first guest, and looking forward to continued interactions and be able to, you know, answer fan questions and thoughts, and you know what the opinions may be, because it's not easy. Obviously, being the new kid on the block, and of course, My Racehorse has come a long way in a short amount of time. So we thank you as CEO and founder of MyRacehorse.com. I salute you, sir. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Michael Behrens, ladies and gentlemen, get to know him of the 859, and hopefully he answered many of your questions to the utmost extreme. I know that there were questions that I had, and Joe, as I bring you back in, of course, I know that you get hit with questions at a constant rate when you're out at the racetrack, and of course, interacting with shareholders and potential partners. All right. Try to get your volume up here, Joe. Okay. Good. All right. You heard my question, right?
Yeah. Well, so I was, you know, I thought it was very informative what Michael said, and it's great to get all that out there, because there is a lot of horse racing in general is a complex sport. There's a lot of variables in every aspect, from owning, training, being a jockey agent. There's so many different variables in every aspect. So it's nice to have Michael come in here, and I hate that I always have to follow him up. I wish I could have went before him. So we'll follow him up.
Well, what are you going to do? I mean, even at that stage of the game, you know, it's a learning process. So yeah. It's just when you're in the eyes of Michael Behrens, you just also need to always be prepared. So, yeah. Hey, Joe, want to jump into the weekend. We've got action with Laneway. Yep. Of course, that's our handicapping segment of the show today. But Laneway, race 1 tomorrow out at the Great Race Place. Post time is 12 Pacific. So they bumped that up, 3 on the East. Laneway dispatched at 3-1 on the morning line. You've had an opportunity to handicap this race. What are your thoughts? How's he training, and what's the expectation?
Yeah, I mean, Laneway, he's been training great. He hasn't missed a beat since his previous race in the Grade 1. So everything's going well. I like to call it. He's back against his friends, coming back in the first condition. So I think he's going to be very competitive here. He's slotted as the co-second choice at 3-1. And I really think he's going to get a great trip in this race. The one thing when I was handicapping and putting this ticket together, I didn't really think there was too much speed in this race. And I think it's going to allow Laneway to be forwardly placed. I don't see him on the lead by any means, but I think he could be a great stalking third in this race and really get first jump on all the runners. So in my play here, I'm going to play a $5 trifecta, Key and Laneway on top. Underneath, I'm going to use Greg Dar, who I think could be the possible speed of the speed. I think the two inside horses are going to go. And then I'm going to use the John Sadler horse, number 3, who Laneway actually beat while breaking his maiden. Underneath, I'm going to spread a little bit. Rip City for Mike Pipey has obviously gotten super sharp, so he's a horse you cannot leave off. And I may regret leaving him off in second, but I'm just trying to create some value underneath. So I'll try to key him underneath in third. We're also going to use the 2 and 3 again. The 5, I'm going to use that should be correction. Let me make sure. It should say 4 there. That was a typo on my part. So 4-7 in third. I'm going to use the 2 East Coast shippers. Just something that I always play. Whenever you see East Coast horses coming to the West Coast, you see a lot of those horses jump up. So I think those horses will run well in there as well.
Well, we've been on quite a bit of a roll with Papa Mandela, and as we, touched on the fact that Tizamagician, began the year just right. I like the fact this horse is coming out of 2 stakes events, including that Grade 1 Hollywood Derby. Moonlight de Oro, obviously on the upward trend. As far as my approach here, pretty simple. I just keyed him. I think if he goes off at 3-1, he's going to be worth a straight win bet. But I also used, outside of the logical contenders, Greg Dar, who's on the uptick for Phil D'Amato. I like the way that horse performed last out. The rails today on a Friday are at 20 feet. I would anticipate that they would probably be in that range. But Greg Dar should be forwardly placed. I would imagine we get first run on Rip City. I'm trying to beat Rip City out of the equation. So I'm using Camaraderie, who rallied nicely late. You lose Rispoli, but you get Rosario, and that horse is 5-1 in the morning line. I think Camaraderie is another horse that is ascending in the right direction. But striking a pose, I think this horse has some potential. Now, whether or not he's a route turf type, I don't know. I do like the fact that he routed on debut and won that particular day, which isn't an easy thing to do. The fact that Blaine Wright comes back here in this spot, it's intriguing. Now, his last race on form in May was not good. This horse is certainly going to offer some value, I think. So I'm going to play a $10 exacta keen Laneway. I would anticipate him to get a pretty comfortable trip there off of the pace setters, regardless of where the rail may be set at. So a salute going out to my friend Jorge Jimenez, El Capilla. Hope you're having a good day. He's locked and loaded with potential, also invested in Collusion Illusion. I wanted to touch on Collusion Illusion, Joe. I know that we're going to kind of move on here, but Laneway, post time tomorrow, first race, Santa Anita, 12 o'clock. And best of luck to our partners there with Spendthrift as well. So tell us about Collusion Illusion briefly as we move along.
Yeah, Collusion Illusion came out of the Grade 1 Malibu in great order. He is going to be working tomorrow at Santa Anita. So it will just be, a maintenance work for Mark Latt. First work back, nothing crazy, probably going easy half mile. And then that'll kind of start putting the plan together of what's next for him. So fairly simple, but after tomorrow, we'll start learning a lot more.
All right, Joe, I look forward to seeing you out at the Great Race Place tomorrow. And I know you're going to be up there bright and early for Collusion Illusion. I want to bring Hannah back in. And I know that there's some more voting going on as Authentic was voted the Vox Populi. Tell us about the NTRA Moment of the Year. What's this all about?
Yeah, so it's very exciting. We were nominated, well, Authentic was, for 2 different moments of the year. We're just showing the one, but it's hashtag Authentic Derby and then also hashtag Authentic Classic. So I think we're going to show the link on the screen as well where you can go to vote. Voting closes in just a few days, so make sure you get those votes in. I think it's on January 12th. So like I said, you can vote for either one of those. I think probably difficult to choose which one that that you like better as far as a moment of the year, but either way, very exciting that he was nominated for 2 different moments of the year.
Yeah, I know that your moment of the year would be the Breeders' Cup Classic. I know Joe Moran would be the Kentucky Derby. Am I right?
I think so. Yeah, I just love that I was there for the Classic, so of course I'm a little biased there. But yeah, here on the screen is where you can go to vote, and then we're also posting on social about every day, so you can see there where to go and vote. So get those votes in because it's very exciting.
It's exciting. It's important. Obviously, this was a horse that, in that short window in a year in 2020 that felt like we were in the midst of a twilight zone. But granted, as difficult as would have been for him to have won the Kentucky Derby in May, coming back in a Breeders' Cup Classic, say in November, for him to have done the Derby to the Classic in that short window is still remarkable in its own right. Because, these races, especially with these young horses, so many little things can go wrong. And, when you talk moment, the feeling it gave you, and where were you in that particular point in time? And one thing I can tell you, being a team member and a proud team member of MyRacehorse.com, is that My Racehorse Authentic took me away from any troubles that I may have had on a personal level or here across the nation, across the world. It was a year like none other. Hopefully 2021, although it kind of got off to a little bit of a stumble, we've got brighter days ahead. And Authentic being in that winner's circle in both Kentucky Derby and indeed the Breeders' Cup Classic was something of the ages. So be sure to vote.
Yes.
Your vote certainly counts.
Get those votes in. I know we got a few questions about naming for the Future Stars bundle, so we will be talking about that soon, so stay tuned, all the owners. We will be having some sort of naming contest. We don't have an exact date yet, but just stay tuned. This month, it will be announced.
All right. The action bundle went up last week as indicated interest. The latest bundle from MyRacehorse.com includes 3 stakes-ready fillies. I repeat, 3 stakes-ready fillies. Bringing back in Joe Moran. Can you give us some details on who they are and what they are and what we have to look forward to?
Yeah, I hope so. I hope I can fill you in a little bit. I mean, first of all, I think the great part of these 3 fillies and the best part is they're all 3 hard-trying fillies. They're stakes ready, like you mentioned, and they're all proven at a certain level. Obviously, some of them are going to be changing locations. For example, we have Altia, who's going to be coming from the Chad Brown barn to Michael McCarthy in Southern California, and Bohemian Bourbon, who's coming from Ian Wilkes to Mike McCarthy. So those 2 horses are making that transition from a different location to now to California, which always brings changes. Altia has made 1 run already in Southern California on opening weekend at Santa Anita. She ran in the Robert Frankel. She ran 7th, but she was only beaten 2 lengths. And I was there when Mike McCarthy was walking over to the track with Abel Cedillo, and he was kind of explaining to Abel the type of horse she's been training for him and etc. And was kind of saying how she's this kind of, I don't want to say necessarily one pace run, but she makes that one, and she's kind of got that European style where she comes with that closing kick. And I'll say, and I'm sure you can agree with me here, the Santa Anita turf course early on in the meet was playing very speed favoring. So I don't think the race necessarily set up for her, but when you really watch the replay, she wasn't disgraced by any means. She came running. I think she'll continue to improve with more racing in California. She came out of the race well, confirmed that today, talked to Joe Mishak, and I know he spoke to Tom Ryan. Horse came out well. No exact race targeted yet, but they are debating maybe trying to get her some more ground to kind of benefit her style of running, to be honest. Moving on to number 2, we got Bohemian Bourbon. She's actually entered tomorrow in the Grade 3 Las Ciénegas at Santa Anita, going 6 furlongs on the turf. It's a pretty tough spot here when you look at a Grade 3 for 100,000. It really lines up almost as a Grade 1. You got Jolie Olympica, Olascondra, Lighthouse. So it is going to be a rock solid race. Even though only 7 horses, it's going to be a great race. She is lined up at 15-1 morning line. But like I said, this is one of my favorite angles, seeing horses come from the Midwest, East Coast, successful turf horses coming to the West Coast on our firm turf courses. And to note, when you look at Bohemian Bourbon's record, her 2 wins come over the firm turf course. You see some of her best races come over the firm turf course. So I'm expecting her to run well. And from what we've heard, she is training very good since coming into the Mike McCarthy barn. Lastly, His Glory. She's a really cool horse. She was a horse that was claimed for $50,000 by SF and Joe Sharp. and they actually tried keeping her on the turf, and she was still pretty successful. She ran in the grade 3 right off the claim, kind of had a clunker, but bounced right back from those efforts. Then her two recent efforts were on the dirt, and she ran very well. She's going to be targeting the Pippin Stakes at Oaklawn Park on January 23rd, which is the first Saturday of the meet at Oaklawn. 15 career starts, 8 in the money. It's just really hard to knock her. She's won on the dirt. She's won on the turf. She's won over a wet track. And she's grade 2 place early on in her career, 4-time winner. So she's just a horse that really shows up every time, a cool horse that you love to own.
All right. Well, you talk about having a diverse group, Joe Moran. It sounds as if we've got it covered. It's nice to have the action as well there at Oaklawn. And excuse me, I know we're going to touch on Social Dilemma. And that'll be a bit later on in the program. All right. I wanted to turn the page to Sunday. And you and I had talked about this on our pre-production show as well as yesterday. And it was nice to see that the Storm Shooter is entered to go Sunday, race 8 at Aqueduct, post position number 6 of 8, and dispatched 8-1 on the morning line. What's the latest on him? I noticed he's adding blinkers.
Yeah, adding blinkers. I know Todd was very happy with the way he worked in the blinkers. I believe in his most recent work, he didn't end up working back in blinkers. Todd saw what he needed to see, and he was good with that. So that's the plan. And I think that's going to help the horse. Also, I think getting that outside post position draw is going to be a big benefit to him in this race. By no means is it an easy race. I think it's a very competitive, wide open race. But with a bounce back effort, I think he can fit right into that group. So we're hoping for a clean trip, and he can bounce back to his effort 2 back.
Yeah, and note the fact that he does get a rider change. I know that based on kind of the post conversation with Todd Pletcher, granted we were inside, but I know that he wasn't ultimately pleased with how that trip worked out. So where he's drawn with the blinkers on, he should be forwardly placed. And I might add the fact that the Storm Shooter was entered countless times. I think at least 3 or 4 times the races didn't go. So essentially we're relegated to this. And I know in the back of our minds here between the team, with Joe Mishak, yourself, me, and even speaking with Michael, we want to get him on the grass. We think he'll thrive on turf. But being a New York State bred, for a purse of, what's our purse, 100,000, we have to take that swing and go where the options are available. All right, so Storm Shooter, be sure to get tuned in. We'll confirm if indeed we're going to have it as part of a live option to watch here at My Racehorse TV, 3:50 Eastern, 12:50 for those out here on the left coast. All right, let's talk Motion Emotion. This is a horse that obviously woke up over the summer last year and certainly stepped her game up quite a bit. And what can you tell us? Michael touched on Motion Emotion earlier, but what's next for her? And what's the anticipation and what would be the year-end goal for her, Joe?
Well, I mean, I think whenever you're talking about a filly of this class, you're talking Breeders' Cup distaff with a filly like this or mare like this. The immediate target and goal is going to be the Houston Ladies Classic on January 31st, I believe. And she's a real cool horse. When you really look at her lifetime PPs, she's well traveled. She was successful at Oaklawn Park. She's ran it in California, Kentucky, Zia Park, Sunland, New York. And she shows up every time. She's really been knocking on the door to get that big win that she's needed. She is a black type winner, winning the Zia Park Oaks.
Right.
She ran second to the Great Midnight Bisou, which never hurts to be in the same class as her. But she's a horse that just shows up, doesn't matter where she runs, who she runs against, and she tries hard. And with the big Oaklawn meet coming as well, I'm sure after the immediate target of the Houston Ladies Classic, she has 2 wins over the Oaklawn surface. I wouldn't be surprised to see if she shows up there at some point as well.
Well, I mean, the one thing to note, coming out of the grade 1 personal ends and the quality of company, as you mentioned, that she kept. When you look at her campaign last year, I mean, they obviously had high aspirations for her, taking a couple of swings at grade 1 company, including here in California. But I think she's certainly knowing that division. Would you agree that is a particular division that's pretty transparent, that is weakened turning into 2021?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. And with so many options, it's kind of, I think what comes down to management decisions of finding the right spots to get her that big win, and really finding maybe some of those spots that we may call weaker. But of course, you got Monomoy Girl, and you got some other horses in that category that are consistent, and you're going to see at the top levels.
Right.
But I think from a whole, I would definitely agree with you.
I think the better word for it, it's a thin division. I mean, you've got this, and there's essentially there's no bottom. It's pretty wide open, and there's plenty of money to to be had out there with a mare filly such as this. All right, let's chime up some action, some video, if we will.
Is a filly with a tremendous pedigree, has showed great promise on the track, already earning over $500,000. She's a listed stakes winner and multiple graded stakes placed.
Motion, Emotion, Ultimate Mo, and Irish Mischief. Motion, Emotion in front. Motion, Emotion won by a length and a half.
All of the potential in the world is there. She's from the immediate family of the great Shared Account, who was a Breeders' Cup winner. The pedigree, the race record, the physical condition at the sale as a 4-year-old filly who is very, very sound and a big, beautiful thing. We really think that she's got a great year ahead of her on the racetrack.
But it is Motion, Emotion who has just run them right off their feet. Motion, Emotion in front.
This is a highly successful mare. She was an $800,000 purchase at the Phasing Tipton November sale. That's a really high price point. The racing lease will allow investors to recoup their income much more quickly. They're going to start participating in the earnings right away. And with a horse with this kind of soundness and this kind of promise, hopefully she can have a great year, and my racehorse can have lots of fun and see a little bit more return on investment in this situation. Motion Emotion will be trained this year by Steve Asmussen. Steve is a Hall of Fame trainer. He's based at a number of racetracks that are going to give this filly a lot of options in terms of races in which they can choose from to put her in the best position to win and be productive for us. The stakes races are broken down by grading, grade 1 being the highest, down to grade 2 and grade 3. After that, you drop down to listed stakes, and further from there, restricted races. Any horse that's competing in any graded stakes is demonstrated to be really an elite athlete. The fact that Motion Emotion has competed and been placed in multiple graded stakes gives us a very good feeling about her ability to move on and be competitive and actually win some of these races with another year of maturity and with continued soundness.
Motion, Emotion wins the break, half mile left in the 32nd Honey Bee, and Motion, Emotion with a high cruising speed now. She is opening up, going into the far turn. Motion, Emotion, as she is strong to the quarter pole. Motion, Emotion is now 5 lengths in front. They'll all have to fly to catch Motion, Emotion.
And a big thank you to Ned Toffee, of course, enlightening us on Motion Emotion. And she's a beautiful looking mare. And, one thing I noticed with her, she is a newly turned 5-year-old, Joe, that she's had 7 starts at Oaklawn, 2 wins, 4 seconds, and a 4th. And again, she may be able to get out ahead of the ball. She's currently training at Sam Houston. So is she available right now or will be soon?
Yeah, she's not available yet, but she will be available soon. You can indicate interest on the site. We have a few up there. So head over to myracehorse.com, hit the buy tab, and you'll see those offerings that you can indicate interest on.
I also wanted to mention Social Dilemma, who will be coming up, I believe, later today or sometime soon for availability. Their daughter, Medaglia d'Oro, who debuted nicely on Thanksgiving weekend at Fairgrounds for trainer Al Stahl Jr. So keep an eye out for her. She's out of the mare Singing Kitty, who was by Minister's Wildcat. So you California folks, you may recognize the dam side there. I think that there's certainly some upside potential. All right, want to bring Hannah back in. I know that we at least have one more question. Hannah?
We have a question for you, actually, Sarge, from Jesse Critter. Sarge, newbies out here, can you explain the relevance of the rails at 20 feet?
Well, it's pretty straightforward. In light of a turf course that they're trying to protect based on field size, they will set the rails at either 10, 20, or 30, usually. And essentially, when the rails are further out, as a handicapper, generally you would kind of clue into horses that might be more speed induced, as far as horses when the rails are out on a turf. It's much like anything else. So you can go into your backyard, for example, and if you're able to move your fence line in versus out, you kind of have some perspective on, all right, I've got more room to play with here. So when the rails are set at 20 feet off of the fixed rail, that is basically what it sounds. So the rails are there, A, to help protect the turf course. Maybe they took some rain. Maybe they're shorter turf fields. It's a long meet at Santa Anita, for example. It's going to roll all the way in through June. So you obviously have to protect that turf course. Now, it's a little freaky down there at Gulfstream because, Joe, as you know, those rails could be maybe at 80 feet down into Gulfstream because of the style of the turf course that they have. But at Santa Anita, when the rails are 20 feet, just what it sounds, set up to help protect and in light of what the field size may be.
All right. Well, thank you. I mean, I learned something new every show with these questions. And then I know we've received a few questions about the My Racehorse shop. Stay tuned. We all want it back up too. So just stay tuned and hopefully we'll have an update soon about the shop.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for today's show here on My Racehorse Live. I want to thank CEO and founder friend Michael Behrens for taking out his valuable time. And of course, Hannah, great job as usual. Joe Morant, Joe Mishak behind the scenes on the road. Of course, to Grand Slam Social. Adam, well done today. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Be sure to tune in tomorrow. Lane Way will be on My Racehorse Live. Post time 12 o'clock here on the left coast, 3 for you Easterners. Sunday, due to contractual obligation, we will not be able to show that race for Storm Shooter, but we'll certainly keep you updated. Let's go. Let's get the victory. Until next time, we'll see you in the winner's circle.
Have a great weekend.